So my name is McClough from I'm a PPE major. And what is your name and what do you do in ONU?
My name is David McClough. I'm a professor of economics.
So I would like to ask you about PPE major since you studied PPE major at ONU. So why did you start PPE major here at Ohio Northern?
Well, Ohio Northern University was a good place to start the PPE major for a couple of reasons. From one perspective, that of the student, there was no place for students with any kind of interest in economics to go, which is to say there was no econ major, no econ minor. So we needed some place for students who have an interest in social policy and economic policy to land. We don't have the resources internally to have a full econ major, but we do have two departments that do have resources, the political science department and the philosophy department. What's interesting about PPE to me is that PPE really is simply economics as it was envisioned by Adam Smith back in the 18th century. Adam Smith was a philosopher, and he introduced the topic of political economy. So a philosopher doing political economy is essentially philosophy, politics, and economics. So it seemed to me that we could leverage the resources in the political science department, the philosophy department, and also here in the College of Business where we have two economists. We would have enough resources to be able to develop a major that would be distinct from the other majors on campus and would be something that would serve students who have an interest in economics from a social science as opposed to a business perspective. On the other side of it, the university didn't have a way to, didn't have anything to offer to students who expressed this interest as prospective students. So now we the idea was that we would fill a space where the university may have been somewhat lacking. So we still don't have an econ major, but we do offer this PPE major that offers students who have a social awareness and a political awareness an opportunity to come here and to study politics and economics with an understanding of the ethical systems that inform both. And so the idea to start the major was quite simple: to provide something to the students, create an offering that served the university, and hope that the two would work. And so that was the motivation for starting the major, or proposing the major.
Okay, thank you. So what do you think is unique about PPE major?
Well, what's unique about the PPE major is, unlike a typical university major that would be 11 or 12 courses, say 33, 36 hours, the PPE major is more interdisciplinary. It draws from two different colleges. It draws across three distinct disciplines. The students are asked to think in a variety of ways as opposed to any kind of standard major where they would pretty much be trained to think one way. Philosophers, political scientists, and economists have all been trained differently. They look at society through different lenses. So PPE majors have to be able to adapt to these different perspectives. And I think what makes the major unique is that graduates of this program, graduates with this major, have already been exposed to different perspectives, competing perspectives that are related. And so these students don't go into the world expecting it to be one way. Rather, they are aware that there are different ways of looking at things, and that oftentimes those different ways are not competing but complementary and interrelated. So without making a big deal about that, I think that the interdisciplinary nature of the major is one of its strongest characteristics, and it's one that will serve the graduate going forward into his or her career.
Okay. So what do you think about majoring PPE at U.S. liberal arts colleges?
Well, there are some colleges in the United States that have recognized the need to introduce politics and economics. So there are a number of programs that teach or offer what's called political economy. And political economy isn't as well defined as one might think. Political economy is used to mean different things by different people. One might think that it relates to the interaction of politics and economics, but that's not the only interpretation. Oftentimes, political economy is intended to refer to power differentials between political and economic actors, and some of the implications associated with those differentials. Philosophy, politics, and economics is an effort to identify what the normative element of the politics and economics is. So if you have an appreciation of why our political system works as it does, or our economic system has the emphasis that it has, oftentimes those differences, those competing perspectives within politics and within economics can be understood if one understands what the philosophical underpinnings of those systems are. So those types of values and those types of beliefs are important to a society. In England, where they first introduced PPE, the major was used primarily to train elites to work in the government to serve the country. Folks had to be broadly educated in various aspects of governing. So in England, that made a lot of sense. It replaced a classics education. Mm-hmm. In the United States, we were historically, we kind of come across as much more practical. So things fragmented and we specialized. I think in retrospect, a lot of schools and a lot of faculty in particular are recognizing that these disciplines have to be pulled back together to truly understand what's going on in any of them. So the philosophy element of it informs the political system that exists. And in politics, we debate and fight over resources. In economics, we provide the tools to understand how decisions are made in the presence of scarcity. And these three things are intimately related, as is evidenced by Adam Smith being a philosopher, introducing political economy in the mid to late 18th century. So I think the United States is moving back towards this model because we have fragmented so much that we're losing some of the insight and the value associated with the disciplines. So it's kind of like a pendulum. We swung too far one way, and I think in general there's a recognition that we have to swing back a little this way. And PPE is, I think, part of that swing.
Okay, thank you. So what do you expect from PPE students after they graduated from college?
Well, that's a great question. What to expect of students? I expect great things of students. I don't expect them to go into any particular occupation or profession. PPE is intended to prepare them for a variety of employment opportunities. Those employment opportunities could be immediately out of school in the world of business or government or in the nonprofit sector in some way, shape, or form if a student so desires. Similarly, the major prepares students for graduate study in a more narrow discipline where they would like to take their interests and energy and put it to work on behalf of whomever. So my expectation is that the students will pursue things that interest them, that they will have a foundation both in a skill set that allows them to do any variety of things. The PPE major has required them to do quantitative and qualitative work. It's required them to do work that involves, they've had to communicate both in terms of numeracy and literacy. They've had to do presentations, but more importantly, they've explored a lot of different ideas. And hopefully they've identified interests that will inspire and compel them to do things after college, as opposed to simply slot themselves into some type of employment situation because that's the next step. But rather they are prepared to pursue something that they deem more meaningful. And that could be in business, in government, in nonprofit work, it could be in advocacy work, it could be in education, it could be in any variety of areas. But the real expectation is that students now have an understanding of what matters and how to go about getting it.
Okay, thank you. So, do you have anything to add?
All I have to add is that you are the first graduate of the PPE program, and we are very proud of you, and we're very excited to see where you go with your degree, and we're looking forward to updates over time, because we expect really exciting news from you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Dr. McClough. This is my end of interview.